Born with a crippling defect, he possessed an unbreakable will. He forged his very own martial art and defeated the warrior praised as the kingdom's strongest. Unable to stomach the humiliation, the loser, 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐚, used his authority to have him beaten to a pulp in a dark prison. Devon believed his life had ended, but he awoke, reincarnated into the body of the seventh son of the 𝐒𝐴𝐴𝐷𝐾𝐲 family. At that very moment, his uncle was suppressing him with mana for daring to be disrespectful. He realized this boy was just like his younger self, constantly bullied by his siblings for being too kind and cowardly. As Davin tried to make sense of it all, a voice cut through the air, putting him on high alert. It came from a boy, floating in a shimmering blue aura. The boy introduced himself as a minor god named Julia, the true owner of the body Davin now possessed. Julia confessed he was trying to summon a powerful god to help him achieve greatness and ascend to true godhood. But a critical error occurred during the ritual. He had accidentally summoned Davin. Seeing his disbelief, Julia shared a glimpse of the painful memories he had endured. But Devon saw through the act. He realized it was all a performance, a foundation Julia was building for his revenge and to escape his family's watchful eyes. Suddenly, Julia asked, "Do you know of the great demon Davin and the brave King 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐚?" The words struck Davin like lightning. He finally understood. 500 years had passed. In that time, history had been twisted into a disgusting lie. A story that he, Davon, had escaped prison by making a deal with a demon. This great demon had slaughtered thousands to attain ultimate power. In the end, the brave King 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐚 joined forces with the Sun Sword King, 𝐴𝐴𝐴𝐚, to finally defeat him. The name 𝐴𝐴𝐴𝐚 ignited a spark in Davin's memory. As a child, 𝐴𝐴𝐴𝐚 had admired Davin, even becoming his student. When Davin was imprisoned, 𝐴𝐴𝐴𝐚 had visited him. He had promised to restore his master's honor. After that day, 𝐴𝐴𝐴𝐚 never returned. Davin never imagined he had abandoned his own clan to forge a new one, and he left a mission for his descendants, to surpass the 𝐒𝐴𝐴𝐚 family and fight relentlessly for the truth. If Davin now took Julia's place, not only would Julia become a god, but Davin could finally crush the 𝐒𝐴𝐴𝐚 family and reclaim his honor. With renewed purpose, Davin picked up a sword. He headed to the training grounds, wondering how much martial arts had evolved in 500 years and how strong 𝐾𝐢𝐬𝐚's descendants had become. But this body, this vessel was just too weak. The sudden exertion sent a shock through his system, and he collapsed. Upon waking, Davin meditated, attempting to regulate the energy within. He couldn't believe how fragile the boy's body was. It couldn't even function normally without the constant support of mana. Suddenly, Davin detected an anomaly. He immediately summoned Julia. The little god appeared in a girl's nightgown, only to be grabbed by Devon, who demanded to know why he hadn't learned swordsmanship. Julia claimed he had an illness that made it impossible. Davin was stunned. "You have holy bones. How could you not learn the sword?" Julia had no idea what holy bones were. Davin explained it was a sacred constitution, where mana is stored directly in the bones, unlike ordinary people who store it in their hearts. This meant Julia possessed a limitless supply of mana, a treasure he was completely unaware of. Davin then revealed another shocking truth. The man everyone praised as the brave King 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐚 also possessed holy bones. After a heated discussion, Davin learned that in 500 years, humanity's methods had changed. They no longer stored mana in their hearts. Instead, it was stored in an emblem, and they called it a star. The number of stars a person had determined their strength. Devon couldn't believe it. This new method was created to avoid the danger of a mana core exploding in the heart. In the past, many had perished because of that very risk. But to achieve true power, one must be willing to face challenges. Davin himself had used that dangerous old method to become the strongest. That night, Davin meditated, reliving the horrors of his imprisonment, his resolve hardening. He would rise again and become a sword king once more. Suddenly, a loud banging echoed from the door. "What are you doing in there, young master? Answer me!" Before Devon could respond, a servant burst in. The man was shocked to see the disarray of the room, with furniture scattered around where Davin sat. Davin rose and stared at him. He recognized this face from the body's memories. This was Winston, Julia's attendant, and according to those same memories, Julia was fated to kill this man in 3 years. Davin casually tossed a set of old clothes at him. He ordered Winston to bring a new set, but the servant didn't move, his face a mask of contempt, suspecting Davin was conducting another one of his crazy experiments. But faced with Davin's unfamiliar, threatening glare, the servant's arrogance faltered. He reluctantly obeyed. Davin realized how pathetic Vincent must have been for even a mere servant to act so boldly. He suspected their disrespect had a hidden purpose. Julia shared his suspicions, believing Winston was part of a fanatic cult responsible for murdering hundreds. But Davin dismissed the idea. A killer always carries a unique, dark energy. Winston had none. Seeing Davon's insight, Julia wondered if he was the same kind of monster. Davon turned to him. With glowing eyes and a demonic smile, he said, "I have lived an entire life before this one." Seeing that expression, Julia felt a chill. Had he summoned something far more terrifying than a demon king? The next morning, Winston brought the clothes he had been ordered to wash. Outwardly, his arrogant attitude had lessened, but inwardly, he still held nothing but contempt for Davon. Davon then requested a wooden sword 1 meter long, weighing 500 grams, and made of dark wood. Winston, still seeing him as the useless young Master Vincent, flatly refused. Fine, Davon thought. He'd go get it himself and figure out what to tell the guards. Panicked, Winston grabbed Davon's shoulder to stop him. On pure instinct, Davon seized his arm and threw him violently to the floor. But this body was utterly pathetic. Just that single throw sent pain shooting through his entire frame. Winston, however, saw only the terrifying expression on Davon's face and was finally gripped by fear. He scrambled to obey. Leaving the room, he slammed the door shut out of habit, but immediately yanked it back open, stammering apologies to Davon. When Winston returned with the sword, his arrogant demeanor was back in full force. Davon simply began to tell a quiet story. It was about a man who had lost his right arm and was forced to live a difficult life, only to meet a tragic end. Instantly, Winston's attitude shifted to one of utter reverence. Davon took the wooden sword to the training grounds. He faced the straw dummy, ready to begin, but he never imagined that, after just a few swings, he would be completely exhausted. Suddenly, the dummy in front of him was sliced in two. A blonde-haired boy appeared, dripping with arrogance. It was Devon Adeka. Julia explained that he was a reserve successor, the son of that man Davon met the other day. He was also one of the top candidates predicted to win the upcoming True Sword Convention. Among the 13-year-olds of the Adeka clan, his skills were unmatched. The True Sword Convention was a tournament fought with real blades, gathering children from all the martial clans affiliated with the Adeka family. With no age restrictions, most participants joined around the age of 14. The champion of this convention earns the right to challenge a mainline successor of the same age. And Vincent just so happens to be one of those official successors. But Devon had no intention of leaving Davon alone. He relentlessly mocked Vincent's pathetic weakness. But our main character didn't flinch. He simply crossed his arms and spoke. Even provocation requires a certain level of class and status. He remembered his past life. Even the great 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐚𝐛𝐢𝐥𝐢𝐭 treated him with respect during training. But this brat, Devon, dared to mock a family member during their practice. How utterly disgraceful. To cut down another's training dummy, it was nothing short of an insult. To all martial artists, he should be burning with shame. Davon guessed his father, also from a reserve line, taught him such pathetic manners. Devon's face twisted with rage at Davon's insult. He immediately pressed his wooden sword to Davon's neck. Seeing things escalate, Julia warned Davon to be careful. He's already at the 2-star level, and his attribute has reached the steel rank. Davon knew that in his current state, a fight meant certain defeat, but he pointed his own sword back, unwavering. Perhaps the mindset of martial artists had changed over 500 years. But in Davon's era, a punk like him would have been disciplined by the elders long ago for such an act. Davon lowered his sword, intending to end it there, but that maniac Devon snapped, lunging forward with killing intent. Terrified, Julia screamed for him to dodge. But just in time, Devon's own guard intercepted him. Davon was left unharmed. Back in his room, Julia began to scold him. "Why did you have to provoke Devon like that?" Davon calmly replied that he just wanted to teach the boy a lesson. He was reading a book, trying to learn about this new era. Suddenly, he spotted a portrait. Julia quickly snatched it away, urging him to focus on magic and the 5 elemental attributes. Davon was confused. He didn't know what an attribute was. Julia explained it's a power created from blessings, or more accurately, self-created blessings. Davon was stunned. He couldn't believe mortals could create their own blessings. In his time, that would be disrespecting the gods, an act worthy of punishment. So that meant Devon also possessed an attribute. Davon asked about the Iron Man blessing. Julia said the Dwarf King's blessing covers many things. These attributes grant the user immense power. The more special blessings one has, the greater their potential for growth. The Iron Man blessing is a mid-tier power, focusing on both offense and defense. This was all fascinatingly new to Davon. Devon had shown him an incredible achievement compared to the people of his era. Could this be the true power of attributes? It seemed that to fight someone like him, Davon needed to master this new system. The next day, as our main character was training, some servants nearby began to whisper. They gossiped and criticized him endlessly. "Don't speak so harshly of the young master." Suddenly, a voice cut through their chatter. It was Vice Commander Molen. Is it really so amusing watching the young master of the 𝐒𝐫𝐫 family train? The terrified servant scrambled away. Molen then turned his gaze toward Darvan. Julia worried about the gossip, but Darvan was used to being underestimated. He knew how to turn defeat into victory. It's just that, with this weak body, he'd have to work much harder. A blue potion was held out in front of him. Molen offered it, explaining it was a mana recovery potion. It would make his training easier. Molen saw a deep longing in Darvan's eyes. He held great respect for him, declaring that anyone who would mock a true martial artist like him was contemptible. He sincerely wished Darvan the best of luck. After days of relentless practice, Darvan finally felt the mana within his new body. He had successfully mastered his swordsmanship once again. Meanwhile, a servant named Wilson was grumbling as he had to deliver a meal. At 5 in the morning for Darvan, he suddenly had a wicked idea to humiliate him. When breakfast arrived, Darvan noticed that half of his food was missing. He confronted Wilson, who stubbornly denied it, even with crumbs still clinging to his lips. Darvan said he could let it slide this time, but warned him not to cross the line again. But Wilson wasn't one to back down. He met Darvan's threat with one of his own, boasting that he'd killed people before. Darvan feigned fear for a moment, but in the next second, he used his mana to send a terrifying telepathic message, startling him. Outwardly, Wilson would never obey Darvan, but as he left the room, he couldn't help but think, why did he seem so cool just now? At the training ground, Molen was on patrol when he found a straw dummy sliced in two. He was shocked to see it had been cut with a single, precise sword strike. He knew young Master Vincent was only using a wooden sword. From this angle, he realized, the young master's progress was absolutely unbelievable. Later, Darvan discussed Wilson's new, obedient attitude with Julia. That jerk Wilson has become quite tame, hasn't he? He was just a little stubborn. Give him time and he'll fall in line. Suddenly, Darvan noticed the clothes he was wearing were made from Levidine fabric. It was a cheap material that molded easily, completely unfit for a noble. Furthermore, compared to the family's budget, the meals Wilson brought were of pathetic quality. The conclusion was obvious. Someone was embezzling funds. Both Julia and Darvan glanced at Wilson, but that guy was too dim-witted to be the mastermind. It had to be someone above him. Elsewhere, Devon was training like a madman when his father paid him a visit. The man was still burning with desperation to escape the poverty and sorrow of being in a side branch. He demanded that Devon crush Vincent. He grabbed Devon's shoulder tightly. His eyes blazed with resentment and a terrifying determination. You must become the one from the side branch who can finally overthrow the main family. Do you understand? Looking into his father's eyes, Devon realized that as the convention approached, the man's obsession was growing worse, and with it, his own desire to defeat Vincent burned hotter than ever. At that moment, Julia cheerfully handed Darvan a booklet. It contained the list of everyone participating in the True Sword Convention. It was a file containing personal data, their signature techniques, and even their habits. Davin realized the kid's plan. He wanted to make a grand, flashy debut at the conference. By borrowing the power of the Spirit King, Julia, Davin admitted it, even showing him the mana jewel meant for the champion. If he absorbed that jewel, Devon's body and mana would instantly become stronger. From Julia's actions, Devon knew just how badly the kid wanted him to win. So even if it wasn't for a Spirit King like Julia, he would win this tournament to claim what he needed. Davin immediately summoned Wilson and gave him a mission. Wilson was to find the High Priest, Ryosa. The killing intent of a level 7 warrior made Wilson tremble in fear, but he still followed the orders Davin had given him. Davin wanted him to ask Ryosa to relay a message to the family head, requesting his presence at the True Sword Conference, and promising to prove his own worth as a member of the main 𝐒𝐫𝐫 branch. When Ryosa was about to refuse, Wilson suddenly mentioned a price to be paid for embezzling funds. Her job was to make the impossible possible. Mission complete, Wilson quickly departed. After a moment of thought, Ryosa finally went to find the family head to deliver the invitation. As she expected, he refused to go, but she continued to persuade him, saying the boy had promised to prove his value this time. Please attend, my lord. I will be your witness. If young Master Vincent fails to prove himself, I will sacrifice my own life. Finally, after much persuasion, he agreed to attend the conference. The day of the True Sword Conference had arrived. Revan stepped out with the other contestants, utterly determined. The desire to defeat Vincent burned like a wildfire within him. But he was stunned to see that the family head, Khan, was also present. This only fueled his desire to crush Vincent even more. The tournament began. Every opponent fell before Revan's blade. Devon watched from a corner, observing. By the standards of 500 years ago, kids like Revan were considered shining geniuses, but they had almost no deep understanding of swordsmanship. Their power came mostly from their unique attributes. Their movements lacked even a hint of real combat experience. They were like puppets, merely dancing on a stage. After defeating all his opponents, the arrogant Rivon demanded a match with Vincent from the family head. Just as the elders' rules dictated, Davon accepted the challenge. But before the match began, Davon ordered Wilson to bring him a wooden sword. He then set a condition. He would grant Rivon 3 moves. Until those 3 moves were finished, he would not move a single step from where he stood. Rivon erupted in fury. He thought Davon was still mocking him. The others at the conference also saw it as the absurd, arrogant words of a weakling. Rivon's father grew angry, thinking Davon was just making excuses for his inevitable defeat. But family head Khan agreed to the condition. "Vincent, you had better prove your words with your actions." "I will, my lord," Davon replied with unwavering confidence. The moment the start signal sounded, Rivon lunged toward Davon. Just as Julia had predicted, the first move was likely a short jab. Davon effortlessly dodged the first attack. The second strike was the real attack. But Rivon's movements were so obvious that Davon didn't even need Julia's information to see it coming. Because his attribute protected him from harm, he'd never bothered to learn the basics. Once again, Davon easily deflected the sword's path. This made Rivon realize that the Vincent standing before him was on a completely different level. Enraged, he poured all his strength into the final move. But he was still knocked down with ease. Rivon's 3 attacks were over. Now, it was Davon's turn. Everyone was stunned by the sight. Rivon was kneeling, motionless, while Davon stood still, observing him. Julia appeared, worried about what had just happened. Davon hadn't moved an inch, not to attack. It was an effective defense that allowed him to analyze his opponent. Rivon returned to his arrogant posture and slowly stood up. He sneered at Davon. "Now I get it. To gain an advantage in such a short time, it must be thanks to your little spirit's help. Don't you feel any shame? If that's what helps you sleep at night, then go on believing it. But your little fantasy ends here," Davon replied coldly. Rivon flew into a rage, swinging his sword with all his might towards Davon. Julia, by his side, anxiously told him to dodge to the right. As Davon dodged, he swung his own blade across Rivon's neck. It seemed like a fatal blow, but surprisingly, Rivon felt no pain. The fight continued. Davon used the force from Rivon's attack to land a powerful sword strike to his chest, sending him flying into the air. "Referee Zaron, you'd better find a way to prevent a disaster." Before the referee could even process what Davon had said, he had already rushed forward to attack Rivon. The starlight left by Rivon's blade, and the starlight Davon created, were now connecting. With a single basic sword technique, Davon ended the fight by severing Rivon's sword arm. The fight was over. The referee declared Vincent Adenka the champion. While everyone was frantically trying to stop the bleeding and call for a healer for Rivon, Davon calmly stood aside and chided the referee. "I told you to find a way to stop it." Zaron apologized. "It was my fault." Julia reminded Davon that he needed to rest. But Davon said it wasn't time to rest yet. He turned and spoke confidently to the family head that Vincent had learned, thanks to some outside force. The surrounding guests began to murmur in agreement with him. Using the authority of the family head, Davon ordered Zaron to apprehend the man. Under the pressure of the family head's power, he finally submitted without a further struggle. A healer was still trying to treat Rivon's arm. Julia suddenly spoke to Davon. He was skeptical of her idea, but he followed it. Since Davon was the one who had cut off Rivon's right arm, he would handle the situation. With the family head's permission, Davon stepped before Rivon's father and listed his crimes. The man immediately admitted his faults and begged for forgiveness. Davon drew a sword from a nearby guard, cut the man's bonds, and demanded he show the remorse of a family head. Only then would he use the Godstone to heal Rivon. The man asked what Davon wanted. He replied that he needed someone's right arm. Without a second thought, the man picked up the sword, ready to sever his own arm to save his son. But Davon ordered Zaron to stop him. He then used the stone. 2. Model. Before leaving, Dulin handed over the remaining magic stones, but he also presented Davon with a special card, a way to summon the temple's aid should he ever need it. Dulin then revealed he'd just become a level 2 priest, a rank that left Julia absolutely stunned. Davon asked if that was really a big deal. Julia could only say, "It's more than good." This card granted its holder unlimited freedom, essentially telling everyone to treat him with the respect of a level 2 priest. But no matter how it was explained, Davon couldn't grasp the true meaning behind that title. After Dulin left, Julia beamed with pride over what they had received. Davon praised her, saying, "You're really amazing." Julia blushed shyly. Davon noticed she was easily flustered by compliments, probably due to her past life of being looked down upon. The praise suddenly made Julia think of her father. He always used to eat alone, but she recalled one time he invited a clan member to dinner after the True Sword convention ended. It was the second child of the family. She too had won an overwhelming victory in the tournament. This could only mean one thing: that same honor might be bestowed upon Davin this very night. Convinced by Julia, Davin stood up and prepared to have dinner with the family head, Khan. Just as he finished changing, Wilson burst through the door. Before he could even get a word out, Davin guessed his intentions. "The family head sent you to invite me to dinner, didn't he?" Wilson was shocked that Davin knew. In his eyes, the young master was becoming cooler by the second. On the way to meet the patriarch, Davin unexpectedly encountered a woman. His mother? No, that was impossible. Vincent's mother had passed away the moment he was born. The woman standing before him was his stepmother, Mercedes. Before retiring, she was a warrior so fierce that people had nicknamed her the Giant. And now, she was the one who held control over everything related to the 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐴 clan. Davin followed her toward the family head's room. But the moment he stepped inside, he suddenly found it hard to breathe. An immense pressure was crushing his lungs. Davin immediately realized this was a test from the family head. Seeing that Davin understood his intentions, the patriarch, Khan, released the barrier, ending the test. He said he had summoned Davin for two reasons. First, to congratulate him on his victory, and second, to see for himself if 𝐒𝐢𝐬𝐴𝐴's worries had any merit. At that moment, the stepmother began to use her insight ability, trying to see how Vincent could sever the arm of a level 2 warrior without being able to use mana. She recognized a sword style similar to that of the hero king, 𝐒𝐫𝐫𝐲, but then she claimed his sword could suppress the great demon king, Davin. Davin was speechless at this complete distortion of history. Suddenly, Mercedes used her piercing insight, looking straight into Davin as she placed her hands on his shoulders, holding him firm. That sword style. It's just like that of our family's hero, Samuel. How did you learn it, my son? You'll tell your mother, won't you? Davin realized. It wasn't the family head who had called him here, but Mercedes. She was the one masterminding this entire conversation. She wanted to know the origin of his martial arts. Davin was about to lie his way out of it, but Julia quickly stopped him. Mercedes possessed the ability to distinguish lies from truth with her eyes. Any flimsy excuse would only make her more suspicious. Unsure what to do, Davin was about to tell her everything, but Julia stopped him again. She wanted to try it her way, but she was afraid Mercedes would see through their act. Davin decided to take the first step, creating an opening for Julia to follow his lead. He admitted to Mercedes that he had received a divine oracle. She became enraged, knowing that receiving an oracle without a blessing was a sign of a wicked person. Just then, Julia prompted Davin to speak. He told Mercedes that if she found him suspicious, she could go and confirm his story with the temple. Besides, if he were truly a demon, why didn't the level 3 bishop with the magic stone in his hand detect anything? Thanks to the perfect synergy between Davin and Julia, the two of them finally managed to deceive Mercedes, and the family head, Khan, gave his approval. Davin could continue to practice that martial art, but Mercedes was still worried about his decision. The patriarch had already considered what would happen. If they claimed Vincent was using the Hero King's sword style, the Samuel clan would cause an uproar, accusing them of theft. And if they said it was the Demon King's sword style, they would cause chaos. Reassured by the patriarch's words, Mercedes instructed Davin to do his best, to grow stronger and not cause any more trouble for the family head. For his great achievement in the True Sword Convention, and for affirming his status as a direct descendant of the 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐴 clan, Davin was granted one wish by the family head, Khan. Davin said he wanted to become stronger, but that was something he had to achieve himself. The family head could only grant him something within his power. Julia immediately told Davin to ask for permission to enter the family library. According to the rules, only a level 3 master could enter the library, but since it was a wish, the family head agreed. He told Mercedes to give the Blood Lotus to Davin, saying it was a reward for keeping his promise. The Blood Lotus was the sword he used as a young man when he first began to build his reputation in this world. It was a piece of 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐴's history itself. Davin and Julia were about to happily return to their room when Mercedes called out to them. She wanted to talk to Davin for a moment. She was very proud of what Davin had done. She told him he had become the winner of the True Sword Convention. Therefore, he was obligated to enter the Blood Castle, one of the 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐴 family's training academies. As was tradition, to enter, one must not only win the tournament but also subdue the blood demon, Vorasa. Mercedes asked Davin how he planned to subdue the blood demon. Following Julia's advice, Davin replied that he didn't know yet. She knew that using that sword technique just a few times, caused this body immense pain, and the blood demon couldn't be defeated with a single blow. Julia was a little suspicious, seeing her stepmother giving them advice about the blood demon, but Devon felt she had no ill intentions. In fact, he felt that she liked the two of them more now. Outside in the courtyard, Wilson was happily hanging clothes. He thought to himself, "Today, I'll support the young master with all my might." But as soon as he finished his sentence, a suitcase slammed into the back of his head. "Support my foot. What are you scheming this time, Wilson?" He turned around angrily to look at the person who had hit him. It was Ceres. She had just returned after some time away at home. Wilson proudly showed Ceres that he was hanging clothes for the young master. Ceres was a little surprised. Wilson proudly added that since the young master had changed, he should change too. Inside the family library, Devon had rummaged through all the bookshelves, but he still couldn't find a single book that recorded the history of 500 years ago. If there were any, they were just folktales about the hero king 𝐒𝐫𝐬𝐚 and the great demon king Devon. It was as if someone had deliberately erased or changed history. Julia suddenly asked, "You called father. You're just a child, yet you wield the swordsmanship of the valiant king. Who are you?" Devon flinched. He was terrified the truth would send Julia into shock, but staying silent would disrespect the body's original owner. He finally decided to tell Julia everything, but the moment Devon spoke his name, a strange sound suddenly deafened Julia, blocking out his words entirely. Giving up, Julia decided she didn't need to know the truth anymore. The two then stumbled upon a book, a romance novel hidden among the MANHWA training manuals. As they opened it, the romantic prose made them both blush. But the more Devon read, the more he realized this was no ordinary novel. Hidden within the flowery language were unique insights into MANHWA. A fire lit within Devon. He had to test this immediately. He and Julia rushed to the training grounds, but as they reached the door, they found Ceres already waiting. She was still emotional over her young master's incredible transformation. Devon was amazed that someone could love a man once so useless, so blindly. Just then, Rival suddenly appeared, seeking Devon out. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Suddenly, Rival drew his sword, declaring he was here to return the favor from the True Sword Assembly. Devon quickly drew his own blade in defense. Just when everyone thought a duel was about to erupt, Rival lowered his sword and knelt before Devon, admitting his fault. He swore an oath of eternal loyalty. Everyone was stunned by this act, but Devon accepted his vow without hesitation. The moment Rival had recognized the Blood Lotus, he knew he had no regrets. Devon then asked Rival to help him train his mana flow to obtain the blessing of the pseudo-prince. Rival agreed, but he never imagined Devon would master it so quickly, causing the flow to break and trigger a massive explosion in the room. The family head, Khan, already knew of Devon's plan to enter the Blood Citadel next year. Ceres had told him she'd informed Devon of the Blood Fiend's traits, but he hadn't asked a single question. He seemed far too confident. Khan decided to send the great oracle, 𝐒𝐫𝐬, with a message for Devon. He had 1 month to complete the succession rite, but when she entered Devon's room, the chaotic scene stunned her. An icy presence radiated from her, making everyone tremble in fear. But Devon offered no explanation for the mess, and 𝐒𝐫𝐬 didn't bother to ask. She simply relayed the family head's message, a 1-month deadline. The news sent both Rival and Ceres into a panic. It was too reckless, too short. Rival insisted it was impossible, and they had to find another way. But Devon had already formed a complete circuit of mana movement. He could now channel it at will. With this power, he wouldn't need a month. He would shatter the family head's expectations. 2 weeks later, the three arrived in a deep forest to fulfill Devon's wish. The moment Devon unleashed his mana, Julia felt something was wrong. She turned around and saw the Dwarf King standing right behind them, but only a divine being like Julia could see him. With a single swing of the Dwarf King's hammer, a golden light enveloped the three of them. Devon had successfully received the Dwarf King's blessing. It was his first defensive trait, body fortification, a power that would make his flesh as hard as steel. 2 days later, Devon and 𝐒𝐫𝐬 journeyed to the Blood Fiend's lair. 𝐒𝐫𝐬 was worried. Was it truly wise to go so soon? She prayed that Savannah's son wouldn't become the first failed candidate, but Devon was unshakable, telling her not to worry. On the way to the lair, 𝐒𝐫𝐬's anxiety grew. To subdue a blood fiend, a warrior needed at least 3-star mana or higher. Yet, Devon remained, utterly confident, simply telling her not to worry. They finally arrived at the fiend's den. 𝐒𝐫𝐬 explained it had no formal name, but most called it the Ancient Temple, a memorial to the first patriarch of the Arsenal clan. After Devon dispatched a remnant of a great demon, Zelsa erected a mana barrier, a seal calibrated to allow only a single monster to pass through. The Blood Fiend appeared. The time had come for Darvan to prove his worth to the 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐴𝐴 family. By leveraging his knowledge of the Fiend's traits, his elite swordsmanship, and the Dwarf King's attribute, Darvan defeated the Blood Fiend with astonishing ease. But as he stood there, feeling proud, Zelsa's heart sank. She suspected Darvan didn't know the truth. A Blood Fiend cannot be defeated so easily, because it has 2 lives. Just then, a second fiend materialized right behind Darvan. Zelsa screamed, "Young master! Look out!" Darvan ducked in a flash, narrowly dodging the creature's attack. This new form was different, its speed terrifyingly faster. Darvan was cornered, with no room to retreat. The fiend swung its scythe, and the wall behind Darvan was cleaved in 2. Darvan decided on a new strategy. He would let the fiend grow careless, baiting it into a decisive, final attack. Only then would he unleash his true plan. Watching from outside the barrier, Zelsa could only witness it all. She was frantic, but she couldn't interfere. To help him would mean his immediate failure. She could only pray. Her memories flooded back. Zelsa had come from a fallen family, but Lady Savannah, Vincent's mother, gave her a chance. She adventured alongside Vincent's parents, becoming a legendary. To her, Savannah was more than just a legend of 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐴, a rank 7 martial master. She was a beacon of light in a world of despair. The day that light was extinguished, she swore a solemn oath to protect Savannah's only son, until he could become a warrior worthy of his mother's name. But for 14 long years, doubt has haunted her. Can she truly place her faith in Vincent? Or should she abandon this hopeless cause and leave 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐴 for good? But then came the day the family head finally acknowledged him. Hope sparked within her. She refused to let that hope be extinguished by this monster. Suddenly, a shadow blurred past her, rushing toward Darvan. Zelsa was shocked to see it was Rival, blocking the fiend's blade for his master. As if that wasn't enough, Zelsa was even more stunned to see her young master sit down and begin meditating in the middle of battle. Rival relentlessly provoked the fiend, but unfortunately, his sword was shattered by the creature's overwhelming power. With no other choice, Rival used his bare hands to catch the scythe that threatened to cleave him in 2. Just as Rival's strength was about to give out, Darvan unleashed a devastating attack, felling the fiend right before Zelsa's eyes. But while Zelsa was still processing the fact that Darvan had received help, the Blood Fiend rose again. Now, the true test began. Darvan absorbed the power of a godstone, exploiting the fiend's only weakness. The moment it regenerates its wounds, he unleashed his swordsmanship and finally obliterated the Blood Fiend completely. But as the battle ended, Darvan's strength gave out. At that moment, a summoning circle erupted from the ground. A colossal snake emerged. Zelsa recognized it instantly. It was an ancient guardian incarnate. Using his authority as a retainer of House 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐴, Devon commanded the creature, demanding it state its mission to the main family and show due respect. But the ancient serpent was beyond hearing. Its mind, lost to time, could no longer obey. To protect the others, 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐴 unleashed a torrent of ice, freezing the beast solid before shattering it into 1,000,000 fragments. Just as they thought it was over, Devon's voice cut through the silence. Not yet. His sword flashed, striking a stone pillar behind 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐴, exposing a stone-like insect clinging to its surface. That was the Guardian's true form. As the creature lunged for the young masters, 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐴 eliminated it in a flash. It was then that Devon discovered a hidden treasure chest, the very thing the Guardian had been protecting. 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐴 opened it, revealing a dragon bone fragment, but Devon simply split the rare artifact in 2 and offered half to 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐴 for her assistance. That evening, upon their return, 𝐿𝐴𝐴 recounted the entire battle to the family head, Khan. After hearing the report, he ordered 𝐿𝐴𝐴 to destroy her half of the bone. But no matter what she tried, she couldn't even scratch it. The patriarch explained she would need to be a master blacksmith to even stand a chance. He then tasked her with looking after his son. In Devon's room, Wilson was wailing, terrified by the news that he would be accompanying the young master to the Blood Fortress. He couldn't bear to let him go alone, but he was terrified of the monsters and warriors there. Devon, however, paid him no mind. His attention was fixed on the flow of mana from Sirius. He had seen a similar energy signature 500 years ago. Devon immediately asked for Sirius's family name. The moment he heard the name 𝐴𝐴𝐴𝐴, he knew. Sirius possessed a magical body. The 𝐴𝐴𝐴𝐴 clan were the original seekers of the sacred bone, and they had a unique trait known as the magical body, similar to the sacred bone itself. It allowed them to absorb and masterfully wield mana, which meant, if her body was filled with mana, it could prevent the sacred bone from withering away. Devon pressed for more information about the 𝐒𝐬𝐬𝐸 clan from Ceres, but tragically, the only member she ever knew was her deceased grandmother. It was just like the Samdian clan's history. If they tried to hide the sacred bone's existence, the 𝐒𝐬𝐸𝐸 clan must have been silenced to conceal the truth. Suddenly, Ceres remembered another person from the 𝐒𝐬𝐸𝐸 clan, though she too had passed away not long ago. It was Vincent's mother, Duchess Savannah. Vincent likely never knew, as no one was ever permitted to speak her name. This was an order from Patriarch Khan himself, who would be overcome with grief if he heard his beloved wife's name again. To everyone who knew her, Vincent's mother was a truly wonderful person. She hired people without prejudice, even those from fallen and forgotten families. Both Ceres and Wilson were brought here because of her kindness, especially the Grand Chamberlain, 𝐒𝐢𝐬𝐸𝐸, whom the Duchess had rescued from the lowest rungs of society and welcomed into House Adenka. As if summoned by the memory, 𝐒𝐢𝐬𝐸𝐸 appeared. She had come to announce that 𝐒𝐢𝐬𝐸𝐸 was preparing to depart. Before she left, Devon asked for one more favor. He wanted her to investigate the history of the 𝐒𝐬𝐸𝐸𝐸 clan from 55 years ago. After 𝐒𝐢𝐬𝐸𝐸 departed, Devon turned to 𝐒𝐢𝐬𝐸𝐸 with a request: train him until the day he enters the Blood Fortress. After a moment's thought, she accepted. But she warned him that she would not hold back. True to her word, throughout their training, 𝐒𝐢𝐬𝐸𝐸 relentlessly attacked Devon with powerful blows. She even planned to have the priest, Durand, on standby for when her strikes were too severe. A week later, after a grueling session, 𝐒𝐢𝐬𝐸𝐸 told Devon to rest up while she went to the forge to replace her sword. She had lost count of how many blades had broken against him these past few days. She arrived at the forge and coldly told the blacksmith, "It would be a tragedy if you continue to supply House Adenka with such trash, Hansen." She then dumped a pile of shattered sword fragments before him. Hansen guessed every possible reason for the damage, but was wrong each time. That is, until 𝐒𝐢𝐬𝐸𝐸 admitted she had been dueling against the young master Vincent's Blood Lotus sword. This revelation was so shocking that the blacksmith insisted on seeing Devon that very night, desperate to see the blade he himself had forged. Devon was equally surprised to meet the famous craftsman, a longtime friend of Patriarch Khan and a former master. After examining the Blood Lotus, Hansen couldn't believe it had clashed with both a blood demon and 𝐒𝐢𝐸𝐸𝐸. He demanded to see the swordsmanship Devon had used. But just then, Ceres appeared behind him, her voice a mix of warmth and irritation. "Hansen." She was annoyed that he was causing a commotion so late when it was already past bedtime. 𝐒𝐢𝐸𝐸𝐸 explained that Hansen had long been a benefactor for orphans, including Ceres. In essence, they were like father and daughter. Seeing this, Devon approached and clapped Hansen on the shoulder, promising to visit the forge tomorrow with Ceres. At those words, Hansen raced back home with unbelievable speed. He was clearly a doting father. The next day, after witnessing Devon's techniques, Hansen felt as if he were seeing the legendary styles of the valiant king and the great archfiend, straight out of the old myths. His creator's spirit was ignited. He would forge a new sword for Devon, but he lacked a critical component, a Mastodon's horn. Without hesitation, Devon presented the half-horn he'd acquired from the blood demon. Hansen cried out in astonishment, but Devon quickly silenced him. Besides Devon, only 𝐒𝐢𝐸𝐸𝐸 and the Patriarch knew of the horn's existence. With all the materials gathered, Hansen agreed to forge a new sword, but Devon wanted him to infuse the horn into the Blood Lotus instead of creating a new weapon. Hansen accepted the challenge, telling Devon to return in 3 weeks. But when he returned, Devon found the workshop engulfed in flames. He instantly shattered the door and plunged through the inferno to save Hansen, finding him unconscious in a corner. Devon noticed. The flames were erupting directly from the Blood Lotus sword. Their escape was the priority, but the exit was blocked. Devon recalled his ancient defensive sword arts and unleashed them, extinguishing the blaze. As the fire died, Hansen regained consciousness. The sword was complete. The blacksmith confessed he'd never forged with dragonbone before, and had no idea it would erupt in flames. But something felt wrong to 𝐒𝐢𝐸𝐸𝐸. If this was the sword inherited by the former patriarch, Arson, he surely would have known about the dragonbone's properties. He should have given a warning, unless he had a reason to remain silent. Devon then made another request of Hansen: forge him a new sword. He reasoned that if Hansen had already created one masterpiece, the next would surely surpass it. Hansen was utterly stunned when 𝐒𝐢𝐸𝐸𝐸 brought him the other half of the horn. In the end, he couldn't refuse the chance to forge the most perfect dragonbone sword imaginable. As 𝐒𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸 was leaving, Devon apologized to her about the horn. He felt guilty, having intended to share it with her, but now, it seemed he had taken it all for himself. He wanted to repay her, but 𝐒𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸 simply said he already had, 14 years ago, just by being born and proving his own brilliance. As a warrior, Davian knew Elsa would be even happier if he defeated her today. A battle between equals was about to unfold. After a fierce exchange, Elsa believed victory was hers again, but she never expected Davion had already predicted her movements, blocking her attack before it even landed. He then sliced through her mana flow, neutralizing her technique. Seeing that Davion had truly surpassed her, Elsa joyfully shared the secrets of the Galaxy Wanderer's mana flow with him. In just 2 days, Davion had completely mastered it. Nearby, Julia worried he might blast a hole in the ceiling again, just as another divine being materialized beside them. Meanwhile, in the Blood Fortress, Vargan, Pagoda, and the Fortress Lord, Hekel, were reviewing the list of new arrivals. Hekel was shocked to see the name Vincent Adenka. She sighed, muttering about another troublesome brat on the way. But Pagoda had a different idea, wanting to deal with Vincent before he even registered. He feared a useless weakling would tarnish the Blood Fortress's reputation. At that moment, having given his blessing to Davion, the Galaxy Wanderer vanished without a trace. After receiving the celestial blessing, Davion and Julia began researching the Blood Fortress, a stronghold nestled in the mountains near the Samion border. Long ago, countless demonic entities invaded Samion, but the warriors of that era fought them back. From that day on, they bore the sacred mission of protecting this fortress. Davion's excitement grew. This could be where they find Arsene's bamboo scroll, and maybe even another dragon bone. Julia clarified that there were no more dragon bones, but a legend spoke of a different treasure, the divine fruit, capable of curing any illness or even resurrecting the dead. Because of its power, countless scoundrels and vagabonds lurked around the Blood Fortress, waiting for the fruit to ripen. It was the only thing that could heal Davion's decaying holy bone. The divine fruit became Davion's next critical objective. While reading about the fortress, he learned they would have to fund themselves entirely. Using family money was forbidden. Julia told him not to worry, as she had already invested in the Six Law Tower, the most elite mage training academy. By funding their research, she would receive corresponding contribution rewards. The mage Julia invested in was none other than Vanelli Pagoda. She was the co-master of the Six Law Tower, but if the mage died, the investment would be lost. As fate would have it, Vanelli had been murdered, and a scroll was found, leaving all her assets to her younger brother, Vayon Pagoda. 4 months later, Davion finally arrived at the Blood Fortress, with Elsa escorting him only part of the way. For security, he had to walk the rest of the way. In her office, Hekel was informed that young Master Vincent had arrived. She groaned, completely uninterested in the welcome duties. But when her magic stone reported that 2 monsters were invading the lands of nearby residents, her eyes lit up with excitement. Despite Vargan's protests, Hekel leaped through the window to hunt the beasts. Left with no choice, Vargan took on the task. He would personally greet and test Vincent Adenka himself. Instantly, he created the first trial chamber, taming the void monster. As Davion approached, he saw a brilliant light emanate from the fortress. The test had begun. A blue-eyed white tiger materialized before him. It was known as the most powerful predator in the Snow Mountains. Davion instructed Saris and Wilson to run to the fortress if he fell. With that settled, Davion faced his trial. While luring the white tiger away, Davion felt something was off. This creature didn't feel like a living monster. Suddenly, a second white tiger appeared. The situation was getting dangerous. He leaped into a nearby tree to observe. It wasn't just 2 tigers. It was an entire pack, positioned strategically on the mountainside. This was unnatural. Apex predators like these never moved in groups. They were beasts of prey, yet carried no scent of blood. He deduced they were illusions. Davion considered waiting for the caster's mana to run out. But Julia explained that a high-level mage wouldn't use so many incantations. They would designate a core element and expand the spell by copying it, a much more efficient method. With that, Davion's target became clear: find the core element. Using his ice walk, he moved with blinding speed. In an instant, the test was over. Vargan, who had witnessed everything, was stunned. Davion hadn't attacked the illusions at all. Instead, he severed the very flow of mana that created them, proving a profound understanding of magic. Vargan began to question the rumors about the useless Vincent Adenka. The fortress gate slowly opened, welcoming Davion. After introductions, Julia immediately began plotting how to impress Vargan and recover her lost investment. On the way to the dorms, Vargan explained a few things. The fortress housed instructors, students, soldiers, and even children from many noble families. Including the servants, the population was massive. Davion would have to stay in a shared dormitory with the others. Upon entering, he would become a cadet of the fortress and must cast aside all his previous identities. Davion asked Vargan what his rank was. Vargan explained that all cadets start at rank 9 and take a promotion test every 6 months. The ranks ascend from 9 to 1. Passing the rank 1 exam is the first step to becoming a true warrior. Graduating from the fortress would make him an official one. Vargan was also curious. How did a scion from a warrior family know magic? Davian simply replied that he learned it on his own. Vargan found this supposedly useless child increasingly interesting, but to him, a child was still a child. When Davion asked about the divine fruit, Vargan simply said he knew nothing of it, and that perhaps the fruit chooses its own master. They arrived at the dorms. Saris was assigned to the first floor, while Davian was on the third. Before leaving, Vargan handed him the insignia of a rank 9 cadet. As Davion stepped into the room, he felt a strange tension. The other cadets were lined up in 2 rows. They stood at attention, their faces strained. Just then, a hulking figure appeared right behind him. He was a rank 9 cadet, the 6th son of the main Adenka family, Marlon. The moment Julia saw him, her face filled with pure hatred. This was the man who had bullied her the most. Davion merely wanted to put this bully in his place, but Julia wanted him dead, immediately if possible. Davion calmly retorted to Marlon's taunts. His words enraged the brute. But instead of attacking Davion himself, he called over another cadet named Sion and ordered him to deliver a powerful slap, threatening him. If he failed to train the new recruits properly, he'd be expelled. In that moment, Davin saw a striking resemblance to Kajin in Malan's eyes, and without a word, he sent a fist flying. It was a powerful blow, smashing right into Malan's face. This sent the bully into a blind rage as he swung back wildly, only for Davin to slam him to the ground. Davin then turned to the crowd. He declared that the only fear a true warrior should ever know is reverence. Therefore, the only path to becoming a true martial artist is to conquer the fear within oneself. Davin's actions were a direct provocation. Malan was seething with fury, and the two prepared to settle things with their blades. Meanwhile, at a village tavern, Vargo was growing frustrated with Saria's innocent naivety. No matter how he explained it, she couldn't grasp the unsettling aura around the young master, Davan. Suddenly, news arrived that Davan and Malan were in the middle of a duel, sending Vargo rushing back. He returned to find the two on the verge of battle. When Malan spotted Davan's Blood Lotus sword, he sneered, calling it a cheap fake. He then made a bold wager with Davan. If the sword was real, he would forfeit his own right wrist. His confidence stemmed from one simple belief. His father would never entrust the legendary sword to his useless younger brother. Immediately, Malan unleashed his ability, projecting an aura of overwhelming dread. Everyone in the crowd was paralyzed by terror, but Davan remained completely unfazed. This shocked Malan to his core, but he didn't hesitate. He lunged forward, attacking Davan instantly. His sword strike was so powerful that it shattered the stone tiles beneath them. Yet, Davan dodged it effortlessly and countered from behind, blending his swordsmanship with shadow arts and body reinforcement. With a single, mighty blow, he knocked Malan unconscious. Davan waited for Vargo to declare him the winner, but suddenly, a brilliant light erupted from Malan's body. He had activated the blessing of 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐚𝐻, one of the most powerful gods, who commanded the very thunder and lightning. Malan rose to his feet, launching a devastating strike at Davan's right arm. Julia couldn't believe her eyes. Despite being bullied by him since childhood, she never knew he possessed such power. He had hidden his true strength all this time. Malan's attacks grew even more ferocious, so strong they ripped through the ceiling. Chunks of debris rained down towards where Saria was standing, but Vargo quickly raised a shield to protect her. To ensure the safety of everyone else, Vargo ordered Instructor Braun to evacuate all the cadets, then used teleportation magic. He sent Saria to a safer location. The battle raged on, and Vargo was forced to create a magical barrier to stop Malan from landing a fatal blow on Davan, making it harder for our hero to get close. But Julia shouted from the side that he didn't need to approach him directly. Davan could use the barrier itself to trigger a massive explosion and crush him under his own destruction. Davan followed her advice, and the result was just as predicted. The tons of rock and stone Malan had dislodged came crashing down. It was too late to escape. Malan had lost. Citing the honor of a warrior, Davan raised his sword to sever Malan's wrist. Only then did Vargo step in, stopping the fight and declaring Davan the victor. Davan showed a hint of disappointment that Vargo didn't intervene sooner, but the instructor simply said that Malan had made the wager himself, and a warrior must honor his word. The duel was over. Vincent then arrived with a level 5 priest named Kevin, just as Davan requested. But the moment Kevin arrived, he furiously demanded to know who had been carelessly carrying a level 2 priest's insignia. Davan admitted that it was him, and demanded to be treated as the insignia's true master. Kevin asked no more questions, because a level 5 priest like him was not permitted to know such secrets. He simply began to heal Davan's wounds. Seeing this, Malan arrogantly ordered the priest to heal him as well, but Davan stopped him cold. He told Malan that if his arm was healed now, any honor he had left from the duel would be utterly destroyed. Just then, a crowd rushed in to see the outcome. Left with no other choice, Malin was forced to admit he had no honor left and began to beg Davan to heal him. The onlookers were in complete awe of Davan for defeating the formidable Malon. 𝐒𝐫𝐬𝐚, standing nearby, asked if he could ever become that strong. Davan simply smiled and replied that if 𝐒𝐬𝐚 could overcome himself, he could surely surpass his current potential. But Malon was not ready to accept defeat. He grabbed a nearby rock, channeled lightning into it, and prepared for a sneak attack. Thankfully, Vargo detected it and intervened, warning him not to cause any more trouble. A week later, Davan went to see Vargo to offer his condolences for his sister, but Vargo found the gesture deeply unsettling. After all, their statuses were worlds apart. He recalled how Davan knew his name upon arrival, had investigated him and his sister, and had deliberately sought him out. Vargo grew wary. Davan then confessed that he initially wanted Vargo to repay Julia's investment in his sister, but he came to regret it after hearing his story. The tale of a talentless child, oppressed by his environment, resonated deeply with Davan. He spoke with all the sincerity in his heart, to connect with Vargo's true feelings. Hearing Davan's words, Vargo, who thought he had figured Davan out, realized he was the one being given counsel. Because of this, Vargo happily promised to become Davan's official sponsor, assuring him that he would never have to worry about living expenses at the academy again. As he was leaving Vargo's office, Davan ran into 𝐒𝐬𝐚, who was with a purple-haired girl. She was the 9th grade student representative, a girl named Sapira. They were both in awe of Davan, knowing he had been sponsored by the 2nd lieutenant. Vargo was so selective that he had never sponsored a single student before. As he greeted Sapira, Davan felt she was somewhat similar to his mother, Vincena. She possessed the ability to assess the strength and potential of others. He wondered why they were there. 𝐒𝐬𝐚 explained that it was dangerous to walk alone, and that he should travel with friends. Sapira then jokingly warned that he might encounter an evil spirit. The moment he heard the words evil spirit, Davan's demeanor changed. He rushed toward Sapira, desperately demanding she tell him more about them. 𝐒𝐬𝐚 explained that after the hero king, 𝐾𝐢𝐬𝐚 defeated the great evil spirit, its soul was scattered across the world. However, remnants of its power still lingered, forming contracts with warriors and granting them power. They used the warrior's life force as collateral. At that very moment, in his dorm room, Malon couldn't sleep, consumed by his defeat. Suddenly, a true evil spirit materialized, right before his eyes. It whispered sweet promises, tempting Malin to forge a contract with it. By the time Davan returned to his own room, Malin was gone. Elsewhere, 𝐒𝐬𝐚 was on patrol when he was stopped by Malon, who was searching for Davan. 𝐒𝐬𝐚 immediately recognized the dark aura. He had made a pact with an evil spirit. He quickly drew his sword, but before he could even act, Malon sliced off his arm in a single flash, then grabbed him by the throat. Just as he was about to deliver the final blow, Professor Braun appeared. Just in the nick of time. He returns to the sound of emergency bells ringing frantically. His roommate confirms his fears. Something must have happened to the night patrol. Worry for 𝐒𝐬𝐚 consumes Dason as he grabs the blood lotus and runs, only to find 𝐒𝐫𝐫𝐫𝐢 just outside. The thick stench of blood hangs in the air. He immediately commands her, "Use the mana crystal to contact Dragon. Tell him this is an emergency." As they rush out, Dason asks if she can form a barrier. 𝐒𝐫𝐫𝐫𝐢 says she only knows a basic triangular one, but its peak requires the energy of a 5th-rank martial artist to activate. Their only hope is Professor Bronte. But as they arrive at the scene, Dason's blood runs cold. Blood is splattered everywhere, and Professor Bronte is dead. Malon appears before them, and 𝐒𝐫𝐫𝐫𝐢 detects a sinister aura emanating from him, identical to the presence of an evil spirit. Dason can't believe it. Does this mean he has to fight a corrupted version of himself? Malon then unleashes his compulsion skill on everyone. This time, its power is on a whole different level. But Dason roars, "We are martial artists. Don't be afraid. Draw your swords." Instantly, the oppressive force shatters. Dason knows he can't win this fight alone. They desperately need reinforcements. 𝐒𝐫𝐫𝐫𝐢 has already called for help. Dason's only mission now is to buy time. He orders her to form a triangular formation, and he will be its center. 𝐒𝐫𝐫𝐫𝐢 is horrified. Dason isn't a 5-star master yet. The raw energy will crush him. But faced with Dason's unyielding determination, she rallies the others to form the battle array. A triangular defense formation materializes. Malin scoffs at their pathetic barrier and unleashes a powerful strike, but it holds. He strikes again, his power amplified by the malevolent spirit within. His Thunderbreak sword art is now stronger than ever before. The cadets supporting the barrier realize in horror that the god of war Dason is now trapped inside this monster. Fear threatens to break their ranks, but Daeson's commanding voice rallies their spirits, instantly reducing the pressure on the formation. For a moment, Malan hesitates, but the evil spirit whispers poison in his ear, fanning the flames of his original goal. His rage explodes, amplifying his strength even further. The ground trembles with his assault. One cadet is injured and forced out of the formation. Losing a mana source weakens the barrier. Just as they think it's over, the formation somehow holds against Malan's fatal blow. Xian has arrived just in time to reinforce them, but their resistance only drives Malan into a deeper frenzy, and he attacks relentlessly. Daeson suddenly sees them, shimmering lines of starlight tracing the path of his sword art. He follows one of the star points, and his blade pierces through Malan's right hand. Daeson's goal is to wait for reinforcements, but the shield is reaching its limit. Malan gets closer and closer. He has two choices, wait or attack. He chooses the latter, but strangely, he can't follow the guiding star points. He tries again, but not only fails, his left arm is struck by Malan's attack. Daeson unleashes one final, desperate move to end this. But he's easily caught, his left arm engulfed in scorching flames. Yet, Daeson refuses to give up. He grips his sword with his remaining right hand, following the points of light. He successfully severs one of Malan's arms. Being disarmed twice sends Malan into a complete rage. Just as he's about to kill Daeson, reinforcements arrive. Vagon traps Malan in a powerful spell, forcing him to fight an illusion of himself. This magic is known as the Crystal Prison. It's finally over. Daeson's consciousness fades as he collapses. A few days later, 𝐒𝐿 reports the incident to Clan Head Khan. 15 cadets were injured, with no one in critical condition. But tragically, Instructor Bronte was killed during the battle. Clan Head Khan sends his condolences to Bronte's family and orders full support for the injured until they've completely recovered. But he wonders why Malan was able to survive after making a pact with an evil spirit. 𝐒𝐿 doesn't know either. The fortress mages are still investigating. They do have one clue from the eyewitness testimonies. Malan became enraged when young Master Vincent severed his arm, and that arm could not be reattached. Khan recalls the strange sword technique his son used before. The clan head issues his decree. For the crime of contracting with an evil spirit, Malan will be imprisoned for life. The tendons in his hands and feet will be severed, and he will never hold a sword again. As for Vincent, his reward will be to have his name personally carved onto the memorial monument by Khan himself. Daeson has been unconscious for days. In the depths of his mind, he and Julian stand in a void surrounded by mirrors. After a careful look, Julian realizes they're trapped inside Malan's memories. They witness Malan's conversation with the lieutenant. To avoid defeat, Malan had unleashed the Thunder God's guardian force, just as Vagon had suggested. Suddenly, darkness swallows everything. Julian disappears. Daeson's own memories flash before him. His mother, his master Nendia, Focus, Xian, and even 𝐒𝐬𝐬𝐚. Then, he's back in his old prison cell. He sees a young Arsène, who then transforms into his adult self right before his eyes. Arsène simply tells Daeson, "Arsène is Julian, and I will see you again in 500 years. Daeson suddenly wakes up, completely bewildered by the memories. Wilson and Ceres rush in, hugging him tightly, crying with relief. 𝐒𝐿 enters right behind them. After a few greetings, 𝐒𝐿 asks Daeson for a small favor. He wants him to fight a match against the young master of the Samdian house. In truth, 𝐒𝐿 wants him to participate in the friendly gathering between the 𝐼𝐴𝐴𝐿 and Samdian clans. It's an event so massive that both clan heads will be in attendance, and this year, it's being held right here in Blood Fortress. Daeson wonders why 𝐒𝐿 is only mentioning this now. 𝐒𝐿 admits that Malan was originally supposed to participate, but after the incident, Daeson is the only direct descendant left. His opponent is the sixth child of the Samdian family, a genius with the potential to become the next head of his clan. No one, not even he, believed he could achieve victory. Second place was the highest anyone had ever reached, a wall that seemed insurmountable. The pressure was immense, for to be connected to the Samdian family, and even consider defeat, was to defy the very will of the great Alencia household. At that moment, the family head, Khan, arrived to see him, so he made a solemn vow to the old man. He would bring victory home for House Adeka. They also saw this as the perfect chance to gauge the true power of the Samdian clan. And that's where our story pauses for now. If you want to see what happens next, show your support with a like and share so we can bring you more of this epic saga.